It's been a while since my last video. I don't have to say, everybody knows that September is a blur. But it wasn't the easiest transition to come back from the cottage. And it wasn't just I love summer and I don't want it to be over. But there was something maybe a little existential happening for me. In February, the doctor, in the process of telling us that, the chemo wasn't working and the cancer was going a little crazy in the liver and we were about to try something else, the doctor did not assure us that I would be around for the spring or through the spring, never mind the summer. So, that was a bit of a dark time. And I remember in March being sick and just actually praying out loud, which I don't usually do, saying, God, just give me the spring and the summer, please. Like, that's all I want, just the spring and the summer. And I had a beautiful spring and a wonderful summer. And so on Labor Day, it was sort of this sense of, well, now what? Obviously, you just keep going. Like you help the children through their schedule, you go to the appointments, you just keep living life. Yes, I know. But it was kind of an opportunity where I was thinking about what happens when the chemo is not steady state. And actually that's a reasonable thing to think because it won't last, you can't stay on chemo forever. And I'm tolerating it fairly well, but my white blood cell counts are getting low to the point that my previous cycle was delayed a week for low blood cell count, and then this last one was too. And they've lowered the dosage as well. So it'll be interesting to see in a couple of weeks what the cancer has done with that. And hopefully we do still have this in a steady state that we've been enjoying through spring and summer. But, I did kind of think about, the next thing after chemo and what that would be like. And that's not an easy thing to think about. And I don't usually. But I was processing that in September. And so there were a lot of feelings, obviously. And I think I've done a decent job of actually feeling my feelings through this whole process. But sometimes I am, a little bit afraid to do that. And a lot of people, I think, with a history of depression and other mental illness are afraid that, if we feel the sadness and the anger or whatever, we're going to get stuck there. And so my counselor actually helps me feel my feelings a lot of the time, that I need that. She's really good. But another thing that helped this time around was sort of this realization. I had a moment where I was having, just a hard day, and I just said, hey, God, universe, whatever, I need some help today. I remember consciously thinking that, and then I got it that day. I met a woman when I was walking in the woods, who, she asked me, hey, are you that woman that lives on, the street with these children? And, she knew about my situation, and wanted me to know that she was thinking of me. And, it was just this really uplifting interaction. And then I got home and there were cardinals playing in the honeysuckle bush behind the house. And it was just enough of a boost, to feel some joy, to keep going through the day and to feel better, right? And realizing that kind of thing has happened, quite a bit through my life, right? Where I've noticed that the universe is actively participating in my life. So I know not everybody, has those moments or knows what I'm talking about, but some of you do. And so then I kind of had to realize, well, if that is the case, then I am safe feeling all the sadness and anger and everything, because some something will come along to help me get through it if I get stuck. So that helped. And, you know, as often happens with feelings, you actually let them through. They pass through, and now like I'm just back to kind of more of an equilibrium, which is nice. Yeah. Now another thing I was thinking about this fall was sort of a tension I'm feeling between, you know, wanting to listen to my body, because I've learned that, you know, I can't just push through everything and live up to all the expectations I might have for myself. That I do have to, I have to rest. Like that's how it works for me. And I think a lot of people have that, like it's chronic fatigue, or it's just, you know, menopause or whatever. You know, there's a lot of people who, you know, find themselves unable to do as much as they want to do, and it's frustrating. But it reminded me of that serenity prayer that, you know, I think AA uses it. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, right? So in the case of this, like it's my, like those limits I find myself up against, like this fatigue and the nausea and the things that kind of slow me down quite a bit. But the courage to change the things I can, like the courage to actually get out and do things when I can and not give in to the cancer too soon, right? That, you know, not limit my life more than it needs to be limited because I'm scared that I might be too tired. And then the wisdom to know the difference. So that's something I'm working on. Yeah. Another thing I'm working on, part of the living part, is I'm still, you know, picking away, editing my novel. And I'm just halfway through the last read through, I think, before I pass it on to somebody else. I have a friend who's done some editing before, like structural editing. I know it's decently, like grammar and spelling are decent because I spent a lot of time working on that kind of stuff in the past. But, you know, the big things, like, you know, character development and plot and themes being evident and all that. So what's happening for me is that I read this thing and I decide it's not any good at all and not special at all, and why am I doing this? But I still like the concept, and it's still fun to do, so I'm gonna keep going. And yeah, that's been positive. Anyway, I hope that all of you have been having a beautiful fall, and we will talk again soon.